The black belt lay buried beneath 3 years of lesson plans and ungraded essays. Its silk worn soft from victories Madison Harper no longer talked about. She found it while searching for her old law textbooks in the closet, fingers trembling not from fear, but from something harder to name, the weight of knowing that some battles require more than just walking away. The leather case beside it held something even more dangerous, a folder marked Harper vs. Columbia University, Settlement Confidential. She'd won that fight with words and evidence. Not fists, but Tyler Morrison was about to learn that she remembered how to use both. The November wind rattled the windows of her classroom at Lincoln High, carrying the distant roar from the football field where Coach Morrison ran his Friday practice like a general preparing for war. Madison touched the fading bruise on her wrist, not from any student, but from catching herself against the desk when Tyler had accidentally bumped into her that morning. His phone held at an angle she recognized too well. "Recording me again?" she'd asked quietly, adjusting her cardigan to cover more of her blouse. "Paranoid much, Miss H." Tyler's grin belonged on a shark. "Though I bet you'd get way more YouTube views than these boring lectures about dead white poets." That was 3 hours ago. Now, Madison sat alone in her empty classroom, laptop open to an email that changed everything. Sarah Chen from the biology department had forwarded it with shaking hands a link to a website called Teachers After Dark, featuring a video that looked exactly like Madison doing things she'd never done, in places she'd never been. The technology was flawless. Even she had to look twice to spot the telltale signs, the way her neck moved wrong. The bedroom that belonged to someone else's fantasies. But to the 47,000 viewers in the past 6 hours, it was real enough. Her phone buzzed. Amanda Rodriguez, the friend who'd graduated law school when Madison dropped out, had seen the link. "This is a federal crime now. The SHIELD Act passed last year. Call me." Madison's fingers hovered over the phone. 3 years ago, she would have already been in a lawyer's office. 3 years ago, she still believed the system protected people like her. But 3 years ago, she hadn't yet learned that sometimes the deepest wounds come from trusting the wrong people to help. Through the window, she watched Tyler Morrison strutting across the parking lot, his Letterman jacket bright against the gray sky, 6'2" of privileged rage wrapped in small-town glory. His father's voice echoed from the field, "Morrison men don't lose. Morrison men don't quit." Madison wondered if Morrison men knew what happened when they touched the wrong woman's dignity. Her closet at home held 2 versions of herself, the fighter who'd earned her black belt at 22, and the law student who'd believed justice came from books and courtrooms. Tyler Morrison was about to meet both. The heavy oak door creaked as Principal Johnson entered without knocking. His face carried the practiced concern of a man who'd perfected looking troubled while doing nothing. "Madison, we need to talk about this situation." She closed her laptop slowly, noting how he wouldn't name it. "You mean the deepfake pornography created by one of your students, the federal crime committed on school property?" Johnson's jaw tightened. "Now, we don't know who made that video. Could have been anyone. Tyler Morrison is a good kid from a good family. His father's been with this school for 15 years. And I've been here for 3. Madison's voice stayed teacher-soft, but her hands remembered how to make fists. Long enough to document every incident, every accidental recording, every time Tyler stayed after class to tell me what his daddy's lawyer could do to teachers who don't know their place. You gave him an F, Madison, on his college application essay. I gave him an F for submitting an essay he bought online. Would you like to see the receipt I found? He used his father's credit card. Johnson's face flushed purple. You can't prove. Texas is a one-party consent state. Madison pulled out her phone, showing the recording app. Every threat he's made, every admission, every time he's bragged about what he was going to do to me, I have it all, legally obtained, fully admissible. The principal stepped back as if she'd pulled a weapon. In a way, she had. You've been recording our students. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. Vanina she stood, noting with dark satisfaction how Johnson moved aside. The same way I protected myself at Columbia when my professor did something similar. Except this time, I'm not 23 and scared. This time, I know exactly what the law says about schools that enable predators. Tyler's just a boy. Tyler's 18, in Texas. That makes him a man who committed a federal felony with a 5-year minimum sentence. She shouldered her bag, feeling the weight of the recorder inside. Tell Coach Morrison his son has until Monday to turn himself in. After that, I call the FBI myself. Madison walked past Johnson, her heels clicking against the linoleum with metronomic precision. Behind her, she heard him reaching for his phone, probably to call the Morrisons, or their lawyer, or both. Good, let them scramble. Let them feel what she'd felt at 3 in the morning, reading comments from strangers about her body, her worth, her right to exist, without becoming someone's digital plaything. The parking lot stretched before her, empty except for the football team heading in then from practice. Tyler saw her first, his face lighting up with cruel delight. He nudged his teammates, pointing. Hey, Miss H saw you're trending online. Didn't know you had those moves in you. The other boys laughed, but nervously. Some of them had sisters. Some of them had souls. Madison kept walking, keys between her fingers, the way her self-defense instructor had taught her a lifetime ago. But Tyler Morrison had been raised to believe the world would always move aside for him. He stepped into her path. Leaving so soon, I thought we could discuss my grade. Maybe work out some extra credit. She smelled the sweat from practice, the arrogance that clung to him like cologne. His phone was in his hand again. Camera pointed at her face. Step aside, Tyler. Or what? You'll give me another F? Tell my daddy. He moved closer, close enough that she could see the calculation in his eyes. Nobody's going to believe you over me, not after everyone's seen what kind of teacher you really are. That's when Madison smiled. It wasn't a teacher's smile or a victim's smile. It was the smile she'd worn the day she'd won her black belt. The day she'd made a university settle out of court. The day she'd decided that sometimes the only way forward was through. Tyler, she said softly, making sure her words were clear for his recording. I'm giving you one chance to step aside. This is your only warning. He laughed, reached for her arm. What are you gonna... The next 90 seconds would replay on school security cameras, student phones, and eventually, local news. But for Madison, they happened in the slow clarity of muscle memory finally given permission to remember. Tyler's hand closed on her wrist. She rotated inside his grip, using his momentum against him. Her free hand found his phone, angling it perfectly to capture his face as she spoke. You are currently committing assault. I am defending myself as allowed under Texas Penal Code Chapter 9. Then she moved, not with the wild desperation he'd expected, but with the controlled precision of someone who'd spent 6 years learning that true power came from discipline. She broke his grip, stepped inside his reach, and used his own weight to guide him to the asphalt. The phone clattered away, still recording sky. Tyler hit the ground hard, air whooshing from his lungs. He rolled, trying to get up. And that's when Madison's 3-inch heel found his shoulder not to hurt, but to pin, to make a point that would echo through Lincoln High's hallways forever. "Stay down," she said, loud enough for the gathering crowd. "You're done." But Morrison men don't quit. Tyler grabbed for her ankle, trying to pull her off balance, to drag her down to his level. His hands caught fabric instead, and the sound of tearing filled the air. Madison's skirt split from knee to hip, exposing the athletic shorts she'd learned to wear underneath after the first time a student had accidentally taken an upskirt photo. But Tyler's victory whoop died as she shifted her weight, her heel pressing harder into his shoulder. "You just committed sexual assault," she informed him, her teacher voice carrying across the parking lot, "in front of 30 witnesses and at least a dozen cameras. Your father's lawyer is going to have a very interesting Monday." That's when Tyler Morrison, star quarterback and golden boy, began to cry. Not from pain, Madison had been careful about that. She knew exactly how much pressure to apply without causing real damage. He cried from the sudden understanding that his armor had cracked, that his name and his father's influence and his family's money might not be enough this time. "Please," he sobbed, all bravado evaporating. "I didn't mean my dad will kill me. Please don't. You posted a deep-fake video of me 6 hours ago," Madison said, still pinning him as sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called 911. "It's been viewed 50,000 times. Those are 50,000 federal crimes. Tyler, 1 for each download." The crowd parted as 2 police officers approached, hands on their weapons until they saw the scene: a 28-year-old teacher in a torn skirt holding down a football player with one heel, surrounded by filming teenagers. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to step back." Madison moved away slowly, hands visible, teacher calm, never wavering. "Officers, I was assaulted in your parking lot. I defended myself as legally allowed. This student has also committed federal cybercrimes. I have recordings of his confession." Tyler tried to stand. Grass stains on his Letterman jacket like shame made visible. "She attacked me. She's crazy. My father is Coach Morrison," the older officer finished. "We know who your father is, son. We also know who Miss Harper is. She teaches my daughter." The subtext hung heavy. Everyone knew who Madison Harper was now. The teacher from that video. The woman who had been digitally stripped and served up for consumption. The victim who was supposed to disappear quietly. Instead, she stood in a torn skirt in a high school parking lot, surrounded by cameras and questions, refusing to be anyone's cautionary tale. Principal Johnson arrived, breathless and panicked. Behind him, Coach Morrison thundered across the parking lot like doom in coaching shorts. His face went from red to white when he saw his son on the ground, grass-stained and tear-tracked. "What the hell happened here?" "Your son assaulted Miss Harper," the younger officer said. "She defended herself." "Bullshit." Morrison stepped toward Madison, 6'4" of former linebacker rage. "This bitch has been Coach Morrison." Madison's voice cut through his tirade like a blade through bluster. "Choose your next words very carefully. We're being recorded, and defamation is still actionable in Texas." The coach's mouth opened, closed, opened again, behind him. His wife appeared, Eleanor Morrison, school board member and local real estate queen. Her pearls catching the light like tears. "There must be some misunderstanding. Eleanor began, but Madison was done with misunderstandings. Your son created and distributed pornographic deepfake videos of me. When confronted, he physically assaulted me and tore my clothing. I defended myself. She turned to the officers. I want to press charges. All applicable charges. You can't prove, Tyler started. I can. Tara Chen stepped out of the crowd, laptop in hand. I've been documenting the metadata. The videos were created on school computers during Tyler's free period. His login, his IP address, his digital fingerprints all over it. The silence that followed had weight, like the moment before a verdict. Madison felt it settling into her bones, not vindication yet, but the promise of it, the suggestion that maybe, this time, the system might work. Tyler Morrison, the older officer said, reaching for his cuffs. You're under arrest for assault. There'll be federal agents wanting to talk to you about the rest. No! Eleanor Morrison lunged forward, designer heels slipping on asphalt. You don't understand. We have lawyers. This is all a misunderstanding. Ma'am, step back. But Eleanor had been stepping forward her whole life. Through PTA meetings and country clubs and school board elections, she grabbed Madison's torn skirt, trying to shake sense into her. You're ruining his future. Over what? Some stupid prank boys will be boys? Madison looked down at the woman's manicured fingers clutching her clothes, then up at her desperate face. For a moment, she saw her own mother there, another woman who'd been taught that keeping quiet kept you safe. Mrs. Morrison, Madison said gently, removing the woman's hands. Your son ruined his own future the moment he decided I wasn't human enough to deserve dignity. You ruined it more by teaching him he could buy his way out of consequences. Tyler was in handcuffs now, his teammates recording every second. Tomorrow, he'd be famous for all the wrong reasons, the golden boy who got taken down by an English teacher in heels. Coach Morrison hadn't moved, standing like a statue while his world crumbled. Finally, he spoke, voice hoarse. How much? Madison blinked. Excuse me, to make this go away, how much do you want? The crowd gasped. Even the officers looked disgusted, but Madison just smiled that dangerous smile again. I wanted to teach poetry in peace. I wanted to grade papers without being sexually harassed. I wanted to exist without being turned into your son's digital sex toy. She shouldered her bag, torn skirt fluttering like a battle flag. But since I can't have any of that, I'll take justice instead. See you in court. Coach, both courts, criminal and civil. She walked away then, leaving chaos in her wake. Students filmed her exit like she was a hero in a movie. And maybe she was. The teacher who fought back. The woman who refused to disappear. Behind her, Tyler Morrison sobbed in the back of a police car while his parents screamed at lawyers on their phones. Principal Johnson stood frozen, probably calculating how many ways the school was liable. The other teachers watched from windows, some with admiration, others with fear. Madison didn't look back. She had calls to make Amanda about the federal charges, her old law school contacts about civil suits, maybe even a few reporters who'd been leaving messages. But first, she drove home to her small apartment where a black belt waited in a closet, where law books gathered dust on shelves, where she'd hidden from her own strength for 3 years. She pulled out the belt, running silk through her fingers. Tomorrow, there would be lawyers and statements and probably death threats from Tyler's supporters. Tomorrow, she'd have to be strategic and careful and play the game by rules designed to protect people like the Morrisons. But tonight, She hung that black belt on her bedroom wall where she could see it, a reminder that she'd been a fighter before she was a teacher, that sometimes justice required more than paperwork and patience. Her phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Saw the video. Federal prosecutor wants to meet Monday. This is big. Maddie. Bigger than Tyler. Madison typed back, good. I'm done being small. Outside. November wind shook the windows like applause. Or like warning. Madison couldn't tell which and found she didn't care. Some fights chose you whether you wanted them or not. The only choice was whether you faced them with your fists or your principles or, if you were very lucky and very prepared, both. She opened her laptop and began typing, "To whom it may concern. My name is Madison Harper. I am a teacher at Lincoln High School. Today, I was sexually assaulted by a student who had previously created pornographic deepfake videos of me. I defended myself. This is my statement." The words flowed like poetry, like justice, like war. By morning, it would be everywhere, the teacher who fought back, the woman who knew her rights, the victim who refused to be victimized. But that was tomorrow's battle. Tonight, Madison Harper sat in her small apartment, black belt on the wall, law books within reach, and finally felt like herself again. Not the scared girl who'd fled law school after an assault. Not the quiet teacher who'd tried to disappear into lesson plans and literature. She was Madison Harper, black belt, and legal scholar, teacher and fighter. And Tyler Morrison had made the last mistake of his privileged life by forgetting that sometimes the smallest-looking people carried the biggest weapons. The recorder in her bag held 3 months of evidence. Her laptop contained backed-up files of every threat, every incident, every small cruelty that led to this moment. Texas law was on her side. Federal law was on her side. And for once, just once, that might be enough. Her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. She let it go to voicemail, already knowing it would be either a threat or a lawyer. Maybe both. Madison smiled, fingers tracing the edge of her torn skirt. Tomorrow, she'd wear a pantsuit to school, armor for the battle ahead. But tonight, she kept the skirt as evidence and a reminder sometimes the clothes make the woman, but sometimes the woman makes the moment. Torn skirt and all. The prosecution would call it assault and cybercrimes. The defense would cry about ruined futures and youthful mistakes. But Madison would call it what it really was the day she remembered that justice and strength were not opposites but allies, and that sometimes the best lesson a teacher could give was showing her students that nobody, absolutely nobody, was too powerful to face consequences. Part 1 ended here, in a small apartment with big implications, where a woman prepared for war with weapons both physical and legal. Tyler Morrison thought he'd broken her. Instead, he'd reminded her who she really was, and that would be his greatest mistake of all. The FBI arrived at Lincoln High on a gray Monday morning that tasted like vindication. Madison watched from her classroom window as 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot where she'd pinned Tyler Morrison with her heel just 72 hours ago. The viral video had been viewed 12 million times. Adage, "Teacher Fights Back," was trending globally. But, more importantly, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Texas had taken interest in what they called a clear pattern of cyber-enabled sexual violence. "They're here," Sarah Chen whispered from the doorway, still clutching the external hard drive that contained 3 months of digital evidence. Tyler's in Principal Johnson's office. Madison didn't move from the window. She'd worn her best courtroom suit, charcoal gray, with sharp shoulders, the one she'd bought for law school mock trials and never thought she'd need again. Is his father with him? The whole Morrison legal team. They flew in someone from Houston. Good. Madison's reflection in the window smiled back at her. They'll need all the help they can get. The classroom door burst open. Eleanor Morrison stood there, designer suit wrinkled, eyes wild with the particular desperation of a mother watching her son's future evaporate. Behind her, two men in expensive suits hovered like vultures in Armani. "We need to talk," Eleanor said. "No," Madison replied, still facing the window. "We need lawyers present. Yours seem adequate. Mine will be here in 10 minutes. "Madison, Miss Harper, please." Eleanor's voice cracked. "He's just a boy. He made a mistake. Don't you remember being 18? Don't you remember making mistakes?" Madison finally turned. "I remember being 23. Mrs. Morrison. I remember trusting a professor who created videos of me too. I remember how the university made it disappear to protect his tenure. I remember deciding to become a teacher because I thought high schools would be different." She gestured to the FBI vehicles outside. "I was wrong, but this time, I'm not 23, and I'm not afraid." One of the lawyers stepped forward. "Miss Harper, I'm William Thornton from Morrison, Cade, and Associates. We're prepared to offer a substantial settlement. $2.3 million. Madison interrupted. "That's my number. Plus Tyler's guilty plea to federal charges, plus Coach Morrison's resignation, plus a complete overhaul of Lincoln High's Title IX procedures." Thornton's face went pale. How did you? "Because that's what Columbia paid, adjusted for inflation and punitive damages." Madison pulled out a folder, the one from her closet, edges worn from years of being hidden. "I've done this before, Mr. Thornton. The difference is, this time, I'm not signing any NDAs." Eleanor Morrison sank into a student desk, shoulders shaking. "You're destroying our family." "No," Madison said gently. "Tyler destroyed your family when he decided to create pornographic videos of me. You destroyed it more when you taught him his last name was a get-out-of-jail-free card." The door opened again. Amanda Rodriguez entered in full prosecutor mode, followed by a woman Madison didn't recognize older. Steel-gray hair, carrying herself like she'd eaten bigger fish than the Morrison lawyers for breakfast. "Patricia Hayes," the woman introduced herself, "federal judge, retired. Now I specialize in Title IX cases against educational institutions. Miss Harper, we need to talk about suing the school district." William Thornton actually stepped backward. Everyone in Texas legal circles knew Judge Hayes. She'd once made a university president cry on the stand. "The school knew," Madison said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "They've settled 3 sexual harassment cases in the past 5 years, all sealed, all with NDAs, but NDAs can't hide patterns from federal investigators." That's when they heard the commotion from the principal's office. Raised voices, a door slamming. Then Tyler Morrison being led down the hallway in handcuffs. Again. But this time, it was federal agents doing the leading. He saw his mother through the classroom doorway and broke. "Mom! Mom! Please, tell them it was a joke. Tell them I didn't mean it." Eleanor tried to run to him, but one of her own lawyers held her back. Madison watched the boy who'd terrorized her for months being read his rights by an agent who looked like somebody's grandmother. The same grandmother who then turned and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Tyler Morrison, You're under arrest for violation of 18 U.S.C. 1343 wire fraud and 18 U.S.C. 2257A, the SHIELD Act. You have the right to remain silent." Tyler's sobs echoed down the hallway. Madison felt nothing, no satisfaction, no guilt. Just the hollow ring of necessity. This wasn't revenge. This was consequence. "We can make a deal," William Thornton said desperately. "The family will pay. The boy will get counseling, probation, community service." 7 years, Amanda Rodriguez interrupted. "That's the federal minimum for what he did. Your client created 37 separate videos, posted them on 14 platforms. They've been downloaded approximately 2 million times across 6 countries." She smiled sharply. "The U.S. Attorney is considering charging each download as a separate count." Eleanor Morrison fainted. Actually, fainted, sliding out of the student desk onto Madison's classroom floor. Her lawyers rushed to help her while Madison stepped over her prone form to retrieve something from her desk. "Before anyone says another word," Madison announced, holding up her phone, "you should know I'm recording this, legally. Texas is a one-party consent state, as Tyler found out too late." Judge Hayes actually laughed. "God, I like you. We're going to destroy this district." The next hours blurred together like a movie montage of justice. Federal agents seized computers from the school's IT department. Principal Johnson was escorted out after refusing to answer questions without his lawyer. 3 school board members resigned before lunch. Madison taught her afternoon classes as if the world wasn't burning down around her. She discussed Emily Dickinson with her juniors, while lawyers battled in the principal's office. She graded papers while Tyler Morrison was booked into federal custody. She helped a struggling student with their college essay, while Eleanor Morrison liquidated assets to pay for lawyers who were already losing. The real victory came at 3:47 p.m., when Sarah Chen burst into her room with tears streaming down her face. "They found it," she gasped. "The FBI found the whole network. Tyler wasn't working alone. There's a whole ring of students across 3 states creating deepfake videos of teachers. He was selling them." Madison set down her red pen carefully. "Selling them? For cryptocurrency." The FBI traced the blockchain. He made over $200,000 in the past year. Sarah held up her phone, showing a federal press release. "They're calling it Operation Digital Dignity. 17 arrests so far." Madison thought of all the teachers who'd quietly resigned, who'd transferred schools, who'd left education entirely. All the women who'd been told to ignore it. That boys would be boys. That making waves would hurt their careers more than silence. "Good," she said simply. Then she went back to grading papers, because ordinary life had to continue even when everything was changing. The civil trial began 3 months later. Madison sat in a federal courtroom wearing the same black suit she'd worn for her black belt test, listening to Tyler's lawyer argue that his client was a child led astray by technology he didn't understand. "Your Honor," the defense attorney pleaded, "Tyler Morrison had a bright future. Full scholarship to Texas A&M, NFL scouts were watching him. One moment of poor judgment shouldn't destroy his entire life." Madison's lawyer, the same firm that had handled her Columbia case, working pro bono for the publicity, stood slowly. "Your Honor, Tyler Morrison spent 3 months systematically creating pornographic videos of Miss Harper. He sold them for profit. When confronted, he physically and sexually assaulted her. He understood technology well enough to use cryptocurrency and VPNs to hide his crimes." She paused, letting the weight settle. "As for his bright future, what about Miss Harper's What about the 36 other teachers we've identified as victims? Did their futures matter less than his football career? The judge, not Patricia Hayes, but one of her former students, nodded thoughtfully. I'll hear from Miss Harper now. Madison walked to the witness stand. Past the Morrison family's side of the courtroom, Coach Morrison had lost 30 pounds. His face gaunt with stress. Eleanor clutched a rosary, lips moving in silent prayer. Tyler, out on bail with an ankle monitor, stared at the floor. Miss Harper, her lawyer began, can you tell the court how this has affected your life? Madison had prepared for this moment, but the words still came hard. I became a teacher to make a difference, to help young people find their voices through literature. Instead, I became a product, something to be consumed, edited, sold. She looked directly at Tyler. I don't sleep well. I've installed 3 extra locks on my apartment door. I've received over 4,000 messages from strangers who saw the videos. Some threatening, some worse. I've had to change my phone number 6 times. And yet you continued teaching, yes. Madison's voice grew stronger. Because if I quit, they win. Everyone who thinks teachers are too weak to fight back. Every administrator who covers up harassment to protect the school's reputation. Every parent who believes their child is above consequences, they all win. What do you want from this court? Madison had thought about this answer for months. I want the maximum civil penalty allowed by law. Not because I need the money, but because money is the only language some people understand. I want Coach Morrison banned from coaching. I want Lincoln High to implement mandatory training on digital harassment. And I want Tyler Morrison to understand that what he did wasn't a prank or a mistake, it was a crime that followed a pattern of crimes against women he saw as less human than himself. The Morrisons' lawyer tried to cross-examine, but there wasn't much to attack. The evidence was overwhelming. The videos were real even if their content wasn't. The assault was on camera. The financial records showed clear criminal enterprise. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. They awarded Madison $2.3 million in actual damages and $5 million in punitive damages. The Morrison family's lawyer immediately filed an appeal, but everyone knew it was over. Outside the courthouse, Madison stood between Amanda Rodriguez and Judge Hayes, facing a wall of cameras and microphones. She'd prepared a statement. But when the moment came, she spoke from the heart instead. 3 years ago, I left law school because I thought the system didn't protect people like me. Today, I learned I was wrong. The system can work, but only when we force it to. Only when we refuse to be silent. Only when we remember that our dignity is worth more than their comfort. A reporter shouted a question. What's next for you? Miss Harper. Madison smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached her eyes. I'm going back to school, night classes at SMU Law, because, apparently, I'm better at justice than I thought. The crowd laughed, cameras clicked, and Madison Harper walked away from her second victory against a system that had tried to break her. But the story didn't end there. 6 months later, Texas State Representative Maria Gonzalez stood before the legislature holding a photograph of her daughter, one of the 36 teachers targeted by the deepfake ring. Madison's law will make it a state felony to create, distribute, or possess non-consensual pornographic images, whether real or artificial. It will require schools to report all instances of digital harassment. It will protect teachers, students, and all Texans from this evolving threat. The law passed 141-3. Tyler Morrison served 4 years of his 7-year sentence. Released early for good behavior and cooperation with federal investigators. He works now at a grocery store in Austin, far from football fields and glory. His parents divorced. Coach Morrison sells insurance in Oklahoma. Eleanor Morrison volunteers at a women's shelter, seeking redemption in service. Madison Harper graduated law school at 32, top of her night school class. She used the settlement money to establish the Digital Dignity Legal Fund, providing free representation to victims of cyber harassment. Her first case was a kindergarten teacher in Houston whose ex-husband had created revenge porn. They won. She still teaches, now at a community college where her students are older, wiser, more interested in poetry than pranks. She keeps her black belt in her office, visible to anyone who enters. Next to it hangs her law degree and a framed photo from the day Madison's law was signed. Sometimes, young teachers email her. They've seen videos that look like them in places they've never been, doing things they've never done. They're scared. Their schools want them to stay quiet. Their families want them to move on. Madison always responds the same way. You are not alone. You are not powerless. And you are worth more than their comfort. She gives them Amanda's number, connects them with the fund, walks them through the process, because that's what teachers do. They share knowledge, especially the kind that can save someone. On quiet evenings, Madison sometimes thinks about the girl she was at 23, crying in a university bathroom, believing she had to choose between justice and peace. She wishes she could tell that girl that justice and peace weren't opposites that sometimes. Fighting back was the only way to sleep soundly again, but mostly. She thinks about her students, not Tyler Morrison or the boys like him, but the quiet ones in the back row, the ones who watch and learn and understand that sometimes the most important lessons happen outside the curriculum. Last week, one of them stayed after class, a young woman, maybe 19, holding a printout from a revenge porn website. "Professor Harper," she said quietly, "I need help." Madison closed her poetry textbook and pulled out her phone. "Let me make some calls. We're going to handle this the right way." Because that's what Madison Harper does now. She teaches poetry and justice, showing her students that both require courage, precision, and the willingness to make your voice heard even when others want you silent. The black belt still hangs on her office wall, but she hasn't needed it since that day in the parking lot. These days, her weapons are sharper law books and legal precedents, connections and experience, the knowledge that the system can work when you force it to. Tyler Morrison thought he'd broken her with pixels and cruelty. Instead, he'd forged her into something harder and more dangerous than he could imagine, a woman who knew her worth and had the tools to defend it. And in classrooms across Texas, teachers walk a little taller, knowing that if someone tries to turn them into products, there's a fighter in their corner who remembers what it's like to be afraid and refuses to let anyone stay that way. Madison Harper kept her torn skirt from that day, cleaned and pressed and hanging in her closet, not as a reminder of trauma, but as a battle flag. Proof that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's justice. And justice, like poetry, requires both passion and discipline, both heart and strategy. It requires someone willing to stand in a parking lot with grass stains on her dignity and say, "No more." Madison Harper was that someone, and because of her, others could be too. Tyler Morrison had tried to break her. Instead, he'd helped her build an army, and that army was still growing, one survivor at a time, one victory at a time, one law at a time. Justice. Madison had learned. wasn't a destination, it was a journey, and she was just getting started. Years later, when journalists asked Madison Harper how she found the strength to fight back, she would pause, thinking of that moment in her closet when she'd found her black belt beneath the law books. "Strength was never the question," she would say. "I always had that. The question was permission to use it, to believe I deserved justice, to stop making myself small for other people's comfort." In her office now, the black belt and law degree hang side by side, equal parts of who she'd become. Sometimes, new clients would ask which one mattered more in her fight against Tyler Morrison. Madison would smile, that same dangerous smile from the parking lot, and tell them the truth. Neither. What mattered was remembering that I was worth fighting for. Everything else, the martial arts, the law, those were just tools. The real weapon was refusing to disappear. And that was the lesson that echoed through courtrooms and classrooms across America. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be erased.